Your problem isn't knowledge, it's losing control in the moments that matter most. You don't need to do more backtesting or get another trading strategy. You need to master what I'm going to share with you in this video to help you have full control over your own decisions and executions as a trader so that you can stick to your trading plan. If you haven't yet realized, there are two major components to your brain. There's more of a survival instinct and there's more of a thrival instinct. You have what I refer to as the animal, which is the subcortical parts of the brain. It's the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is responsible for your survival, responsible for keeping you alive. And these subcortical parts of the brain are more heavily wired because, from an evolutionary perspective, these parts of the brain have been essential in keeping us and our ancestors alive. So, the amygdala, the animal, will always fire faster and is stronger than the human part of our brain, which is what we refer to as the prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for thrival. It's responsible for having a strategic plan and a vision and sticking to it. Now, all the animal does is it avoids pain, it attempts to avoid pain and seek after pleasure. This is the most banal survival response. It wants to avoid a predator, a threat, because of the perception of that threat killing the individual in this point in time. And it wants to seek after prey or food because without prey and food, the individual eventually dies. So the animal, the subcortical parts of the brain, the amygdala, its only responsibility is to avoid pain, to avoid predator, to avoid threat, and seek after pleasure and prey and food. Its sole responsibility is to keep oneself alive. Now, the only issue with the animal and the amygdala when we want to go off and become consistently profitable traders is the amygdala's response of avoiding pain and seeking after pleasure will undo a trader's ability to have consistent profitability. Because in order to have consistent profitability, you have to embrace losing. Losing is part of being a consistently profitable trader. Now, if you think about it, the animal's response is less useful and valuable nowadays because society has built in levels of security and ease of access to food and shelter and all the basic needs that we need so we can easily and accessibly get those things. The amygdala's survival response is much less useful nowadays. So a trader's ability to manage the amygdala and quiet down the amygdala and emotionally regulate so that the resources in the brain can be reallocated to the prefrontal cortex and we can put the executive parts of our mind in charge is crucial as a trader. Because it's when our prefrontal cortex is in charge and it's lit up and it has the blood glucose and oxygen activating it, that's when we can have a clear plan of what we want and emotionally regulate and deal with the stress and pressures in the market and stick to our plan when the market presents an opportunity. When the prefrontal cortex is in charge, we're more likely to be present and clearly receive a message from the market and clearly execute without volatilities and without fear and greed. Whereas when the blood glucose and oxygen fires up the amygdala out of a threat response and a survival response, that's when we have a lot of the trading psychology issues. Now, traders, if you're finding fear running your trading decisions and you're lacking certainty in your trading execution, then I want you to click on the first link in the description. This is a completely free course and free tool called the Bulletproof Your Trading Mindset 2.0. And that's exactly what it does. It teaches you how to bulletproof your trading mindset so you can stick to your trading plan and you'll never be taken away from your trading plan again. You make every decision according to your trading plan, allowing you to scale up unemotionally and have consistent profitability, and as a result, pull consistent payouts from the market. In the free course, you get a deep understanding of your psychology, you get a free tool to implement every day, and you become part of a global community of traders dedicated to bulletproofing their trading mindset. So the gap between your knowledge and your action, and the reason why, despite knowing what you know, you still can't have a consistent profitable results is because of emotional dysregulation. The inability for you to regulate your own amygdala, your own animal response, and put your prefrontal cortex in charge. It's the prefrontal cortex that will stick to your trading plan and make rational process-based decisions if you activate it. But remember, the amygdala fires up. It wants to seek after pleasure, winning each individual trade, which is unrealistic and unattainable, and avoid losses on each individual trade, which is unavoidable, it's the amygdala that puts you in a little bit of a contradictory state and sets unrealistic expectations in the markets. Whereas the prefrontal cortex allows you to embrace both winning and losing in pursuit of sticking to your edge. So whenever the amygdala, the animal, is triggered either by a loss, a missed position, by drawdown, by slippage, by losing a funded account, by seeing that your mentor took a trade that you didn't, whatever it may be, whenever your amygdala is triggered into a survival response, a threat response, you're then put into an unwanted state of anxiety, of fear, of feeling like you're falling behind, of irritation. Now, the reason we have such a strong emotional state is because all the brain is trying to do is increase cortisol and adrenaline, the biochemistry. As a result, what happens is your body is primed in a sympathetic fight or flight response, which what's happening is the brain is trying to exaggerate what's out there, how bad the loss is, how bad the misposition is, how bad drawdown and slippage is, as a way to prime your body, your physical body. And literally, the blood goes from the internal organs to the periphery of the muscles. So you're primed to run or fight because of that survival response. Your brain literally perceives a trading loss, a small trading loss, even just a small trading loss, as a life-threatening situation. Because that response was useful thousands of years ago when there was a saber-toothed tiger in front of you, but the brain can't differentiate between that trading loss and that saber-toothed tiger. So we're put into this same unwanted state as a way to prime and activate a fight or flight response as a survival response. Now, what we do nowadays as a trader is we participate in these so-called destructive trading behaviors. We call them self-sabotaging behaviors when they're not, all as a coping mechanism for this unwanted state of anxiety and fear. What we do when we're in this primed fight or flight response is, remember, everything goes out the window because now the amygdala is fired up and it's in charge. And we have an inability to emotionally regulate in that moment. So we go back into the market, we revenge trade in an attempt to make back what we've lost, to alleviate the state of anxiety. We over risk as a way to get back ahead. We trade outside of our plan because we need to get back into the market, but there's no opportunities according to our trading plan. We become impulsive and trade out of fear to alleviate these states. So it's not random. We can track it back and we can understand why we participate in these behaviors. But all these so-called destructive behaviors are coping mechanisms for these unwanted states because we've been triggered and our amygdala has been fired up and triggered because of certain experiences in the market. Now, the way you close the gap between your knowledge and between your action and you quiet down the amygdala and put the prefrontal cortex in charge is three different ways. Firstly, you want to start to learn and master the contrast laws. And there are two contrast laws. We have a sequential contrast, which is, let's say, for example, we've had a previous trading win. We're going into the next trade expecting that pleasure of that win again. And now if we get a loss, we compare this current loss to that previous win. The previous win was very pleasurable, therefore this current loss is very painful. And by law of contrast, by contrast to that previous win, we have a very painful loss and we're triggered. There's also a sequential contrast, which is in that moment, in that exact moment I'm experiencing a loss, I was really thinking it was going to be a win. And I was really elated to wake up in the morning and see that profit I made overnight. And you open up your trading view and it's a loss. So we're simultaneously, so there's a sequential contrast and there's a simultaneous contrast. And we're simultaneously contrasting it to that idea we had in our mind. And because the reality doesn't align with the fantasy we created in our mind, we have a lot of pain. So contrast is always going on in your trading, and we have to become aware of them. This is why I created the Bulletproof Your Trading Mindset 2.0 tool to help you become aware of your expectations and what you're contrasting in that moment. So you can identify all the positive benefits and expectations you're expecting from that trade and ground them in real time so that whatever the outcome is of that trade, you can face the reality of it, whether it's a win, loss, or break even, anything in between. You're not emotionally reactive because you're not contrasting it with this really strong high. So I want you to download that free Bulletproof Your Trading Mindset 2.0 tool. It's the link in the description, and start using it before every single trade you take, and you'll see a difference. You won't be triggered as much because you're more embracing of what's in front of you, as opposed to expecting something really pleasurable and really high and then being triggered when it's not. Then you want to have a trigger journal. Every time you get triggered emotionally in the market, you want to identify what's triggering you. What is specifically triggering you in the market? What's it bringing up for you? And what unwanted state is it putting you in? The more you can become aware of your triggers, the more you can have control over them in real time, just through a state of awareness. And then you also want to identify what in the subconscious mind, through association, is this current loss bringing up for me? I'm being triggered by this loss, but what is that resurfacing? What am I making that mean? Is that resurfacing a moment back in high school when a teacher called me stupid and, I didn't have the ability to pass a certain subject well? And that current loss is resurfacing that time when I felt inadequate in school, and it's resurfacing that emotional state as well. You want to become acutely aware of what these triggers in the market are resurfacing for you through association, because your brain is constantly making associations from the past. Is this loss making me resurfacing a previous loss in school or in sport, or a previous trading loss, or a previous business loss, or a loss in a relationship or a marriage? What is it resurfacing for me? And making the connection between what's being resurfaced in the subconscious mind. Because if you can go in there and become aware of that and address that and clear that, you can calm down the amygdala. And so too with your pleasurable wins. Why am I being so elated? And why am I so elated after this win? What's that resurfacing for me? Why am I so proud after a trading win? And identifying those positive associations and addressing those, because you have to address both the pleasure and the pain logged in the subconscious mind, because it's both the pleasure and the pain that fire up the amygdala, because the amygdala just wants to seek after pleasure and avoid pain. But the more you can quiet down the amygdala's associations of strong pleasures and strong pains, and the more you can identify the triggers, and the more you can remove the contrast in that moment, the more you can quiet down the amygdala, emotionally regulate, and when it matters most, actually stick to your trading plan. And what you'll find is that your knowledge and your actions start to equate, and this is where you start to build consistent profitability.